Governor Hochul ends congestion pricing, local governments give tax breaks to fossil fuels, and Hunter Biden and the rule of law. Stay tuned, Ivory Tower's next.
This program is brought to you by the members of WCNY. Thank you.
Geddes Federal Savings and Loan offers home loans, IRAs, money market, checking, and savings accounts.
Geddes Federal, how can I help you this morning?
Personal service. Get it at Geddes. Offices in Westvale Plaza and in Manlius.
Bond, serving public and private companies, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs. Providing a crucial link with guidance on business matters, regulatory compliance, intellectual property, and employment law. Bond, essential to your business.
Ivory Tower is sponsored by James Jordan Associates Architects, providing professional architectural services to educational, commercial, and institutional clients throughout New York State. James Jordan Associates Architects, with offices in Richfield Springs, New York.
Good evening. Welcome to Ivory Tower. I'm David Chanatry from Utica University. I'm joined around the table tonight by Luke Perry from Utica University, Anirban Acharya from Moyne College, Aaron Strong from Hamilton College, and Rick Fenner from Utica University. Governor Hochul shocked pretty much everyone last week when she indefinitely paused the congestion pricing plan for New York City. That was a plan to charge up to $15 a day for cars to drive below 60th Street in Manhattan. The idea was to ease traffic, reduce pollution, and raise money for mass transit. It was supposed to take effect at the end of the month. The plan was unpopular, but so were similar plans in other major cities like London and Stockholm that now accept the idea. So, Anirban, did Governor Hochul make the right call in pausing this plan? And when I say pausing, everyone pretty much seems to think it's killing.
Yeah, I think the way it was announced that it seems like the plan is indefinitely stalled. My question is like, why? Is there a reason for it? Where is the data that she's saying that, it will hurt small business owners and so on and so forth? Yes, true that there were some small business owners that protested, some area truckers protested, but if you look at the broader data, right, from London, for example, and other places, I was looking at this climate economist in Colombia called Gernot Wagner, and he shows that, in London and other places, these kinds of congestion pricing actually helped small business owners because now they could deliver goods or services at a much more higher rate, at a faster pace. And it saved about $150 per person or pounds per person and something like that. So I don't know, without the data, without actual, evidence as to how it is hurting and how many people it is hurting, which is completely contrary to the previous studies.
$15 a day out of your pocket is
But it's only $15 if you drive at the peak times.
At the peak times, right.
People make fun of economists for not being able to agree on anything, but if you took a poll of economists on this, I would be willing to bet that 90% think this congestion pricing was the right thing. Yes, there could be some distributional problems associated with this, but how many low-income individuals really are driving their cars in lower Manhattan? Because the cost of driving from gas, insurance, and parking is really, really high. Plus, if you are willing to drive outside of the peak times, the prices come down very quickly.
This was a terrible decision by Governor Hochul, and we can talk about the economics of it, but from a climate perspective, it's a real signal that she's not a climate champion. Congestion pricing was in the scoping plan for implementing our Climate Act here in New York State. And we've lost all the momentum behind that. She's basically giving a signal that we're not actually serious about trying to reduce emissions. There's going to be 120,000 more cars in Manhattan than there would have been if this had gone into place. Those cars are putting out carbon dioxide emissions and air pollutants that are harming New Yorkers right now. This is a major step backwards.
Okay, so, Luke, if this doesn't work in New York City, can this work anywhere in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's timing. What Aaron said is true, but I think it's also true that she did the Democrats a solid by pulling this in an election year. The Democrats are looking to win back the House. I think New York's going to be pivotal in that. They're going to try to compete with some seats on Long Island that went in a Republican direction last time, and they're going to try to pick up a couple seats in lower central New York where those people also drive in and they probably don't want to be taxed. So I think she got calls from Democratic Party leaders, and Republicans have criticized this, and they're right. And I think she said, all right, I'll hold this off this year to help you guys
Okay, but this is a a state and city issue, not a federal issue.
I'm not saying it's the right move. I'm just saying from a political, strategic standpoint, I think that's why she did it, and I can understand it.
Everybody thinks that driving is a free lunch, and it isn't. When people drive in downtown Manhattan, they're not only imposing costs on themselves, they're imposing costs on everyone else via the congestion and the pollution, but we don't want to take that into account. And again, going to the low-income individuals, I think in the long run, they're going to be hurt because the Transit Authority was counting on this revenue to try to make improvements that would help low-income individuals get into the city. This is a disaster.
And you're very right that driving has a social cost. It has an externality, and most times drivers don't take into account that social cost. And this was a way that you allow the drivers in the high peak times to kind of internalize that social cost. It's an externality that has been produced. And yeah, I mean, I agree with my colleagues here. I don't see any climate or economic reason, but politically I get that because many people would be really, really angry about this. This is not a good time to, to roll this out. Maybe in future it will be rolled back. I don't know.
And now is a good time to prompt people to take the subway?
Yeah.
I mean, Republicans are just pouncing on that issue, and this just adds more fuel to that.
So is there anything that could have been done differently?
Yes, she could have allowed it to happen.
Well, no, but in the way that the whole plan was put together, the law that was passed to create this,
you could you could deal with the redistribution problems. There could be a tax credit to low-income individuals that had to pay this. They could, give back the first $500 or $1,000. There were ways that they could have reduced some of the impact.
There's some of that in there, but the details are tough. And you could just roll it out in an odd-numbered year, not an even-numbered year.
What about the cost? You said, $15 is not that much, but if it seems like this plan was put together mainly to raise money for mass transit, and maybe by trying to hit that number, that's a problem.
No, that number was developed, including economists, that tried to come up with the cost associated with driving in downtown Manhattan at certain times. Now, again, if you're willing to drive in at 6 a.m. or other times, the price falls below. It's not $15 all the time. This is to try to discourage driving at certain times.
This has been done elsewhere, and it's proved immensely popular. It changes the way downtowns operate. So I know the political calculus now is that this was unpopular, and therefore it's smart for her to do it. But I think in the long run, it's actually a political miscalculation because climate policies prove immensely popular over time as they're rolled out.
Can the state legislature somehow work around her on this? Is there anything that can happen there?
Possibly, but I don't think they're going to.
And most importantly, look, the studies are showing that at this moment, there are cars that lose on an average $150 an hour, standing in the jam, not being able to get anywhere. These are real costs that people are paying, right? So $15 was not that much. It's like you lose $150 per hour versus $15 to get in and out. And then also in the peak time, you can go in other places. And also there are a couple of entries, I think, that are also free.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's been 5 years since New York State passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. That's the law mandating the state's electric grid is emissions-free by 2040. But it turns out that local agencies have been handing out subsidies to natural gas plants. An investigation by the nonprofit news site New York Focus found local industrial development agencies gave more than $1 billion in tax breaks to fossil fuel projects since 2010. Now, many of those deals were made before the climate law was passed, but there still is a tension between subsidies and the state climate goals. So, Aaron, should the state force the agencies to work in support of the climate law?
It should. It absolutely should. Look, when it comes to energy, most people don't really care where it comes from. They just want a hot shower and a cold beer. And I just want an energy system where we have hot showers and cold beers in ways that don't kill people because of the pollution caused by burning fossil fuels. We need to have an electric grid in New York State that doesn't involve fossil fuels, and right now about a third of our electricity comes from natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. If the state is serious about taking action on climate change, which it is because it's adopted a nation-leading climate law in 2019, it's got to follow through and implement those, and that means figuring out where are we still supporting fossil fuels in our system right now, and we need to move our energy system away from fossil fuels. The science is very clear on this.
I agree with Aaron, but the problem really is these industrial development agencies, and I've been a critic of them for at least 30 years. They have a very poor track record in New York, lack of transparency, a lack of accountability to taxpayers. They seem to care more about the businesses and industries that they work with. And so the problem really is that they have this power to do whatever they want. And in this case, it's clear they are subsidizing the very industries and companies that New York State has decided should change, should get smaller, and in some cases disappear.
Okay, but they're also subsidizing renewable energy projects, are they not?
Yeah, about 85 clean energy projects were subsidized the last time the state comptroller had data on this. There is information out there, Rick. Yes, they don't always put forth the information that they're supposed to, and the state struggles to collect it. But you know, they're giving $1.1 billion in tax credits to different industries. To the points being made, most of those are in manufacturing, so that's a problem. But it is a way to help promote clean energy at the same time. It's just that's not happening at a great degree.
And they did promote clean energy, did they not, in terms of moving away from coal? You mentioned natural gas, a fossil fuel, which of course it is, but that's also...
So let's be clear about this. Natural gas is, quote, cleaner than coal. Why? Because it produces lower carbon emissions per unit of electricity delivered to homes than coal does. We don't have coal-fired power in New York State right now. So saying natural gas is cleaner is like saying, you know, we aren't doing the worst thing in the world, but we're still doing something pretty bad. I'm not going to eat the double cheeseburger, I'm just going to eat the cheeseburger. Well, your doctor's telling you you need to stop eating cheeseburgers at all, right? And so still having natural gas is still burning fossil fuels, still contributing to climate problems. Whether or not we want to use IDAs to support renewable energy projects and how the state's doing permitting for renewable energy, to me, is a little bit of a mixed bag, and there's some issues right now with how we're permitting renewable energy projects. But fundamentally, New York State should not be in the business of supporting fossil fuel companies with subsidies for natural gas power.
Well, why hasn't the state passed the regulations then? If you're saying local government should be required, why hasn't that happened? They get the votes.
They don't necessarily have the votes. So there's another situation right now with the New York Heat Act, which didn't pass, which is trying to bring the Public Service Commission in line with this climate law. It's proved thorny. You pass the climate law, you have lofty goals. It's proved thorny to actually get all the political votes in favor of actually walking the walk.
Anirban?
Yeah, I think, you know, as far as I was reading it, that these IDAs are public benefit corporations, and they're empowered by a state law from the 1960s to pursue policy goals that will help in economic development of the area. We have 111 of those in New York State. Every county has one of those, and you know there are also some towns and villages. I don't necessarily see the problem in the ideas per se, as long as they can generate income, employment. But I was looking at the Office of State Comptroller's report, and in the report they clearly say that there's massive levels of lack of transparency, lack of reporting. Nobody knows how many jobs were created. And one of the contentious issues is this pilot. It's like not a tax, but they do payment in lieu of taxes, right? And that they have to pay instead of paying taxes that on properties that are owned by the IDA. So on the whole, I think fossil fuel subsidies are bad, but at the same time, you know, I don't know why it doesn't conflict with the state law, and if it could be sued in higher court that yes, IDAs can do this, but they cannot subsidize projects that are antithetical to New York State law about climate change. And I don't know why that is not the case. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, I was just going to say, there is the data. I mean, we know the state collects data on how many jobs IDAs create. So they create about 200,000 jobs. Now, at the tax reduction, that's about $5,000 a job. So it's not necessarily money well spent. I'll defer to Rick on that. But we do have some data. But
the lack of, here's the thing, the methodology is terrible. If I have a business and I say I'm going to add 10 jobs, grocery store, 100 jobs, let's say, I can show that I did that. But across the street, there's another grocery store that now has 80 less jobs. The net gain from my opening a grocery store that got this IDA money is actually 20, but on paper it looks like 100.
So
terrible track record.
If there's a county that has an IDA and there's a county adjacent to it or somewhere else in the state that also has one, and they both want the same project.
So there is a law against piracy, that you cannot pirate out projects from one county to the other. So that's in the law. It's called the anti-piracy law.
Hard to enforce, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right, and I understand that there is one of the criticisms is that one of the big impacts is on schools, school taxes, property taxes. So, Rick, is that how does that work?
I mean, what happens is, as Anirban said, you know, they don't get money outright. They just have to pay less taxes, and usually it's property taxes. And so, since property taxes, you know, is the major source of income for local school districts, they get affected greatly by these IDA programs.
But they like it, being on a school board. When you get a company that wants to come in and wants a pilot, you're getting money that you weren't budgeting.
Right.
So yes, it'll decrease the tax base. That's a good point. But you're getting extra money, and you don't usually vote against it.
If they came in anyway, you would get.
They usually don't. The thinking is that they're probably going to go somewhere else, and so you try to negotiate for as much money as you can get, and then it's gravy.
But that New York Focus piece did a good job on saying that oftentimes they'd have to say we wouldn't go anywhere else, but in reality that's seldom the case.
You know, the Barbara sent us this email from Austin Wheelock. There's one thing though, that the pilots are not like completely free. They're tied to performance standards. So that's something important to kind of look at.
Okay, now we have often discussed on this show the trials of Donald Trump. This week we had the conviction of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, on a gun charge. Now the trial had its share of drama, particularly the testimony of Haley Biden, Hunter's ex-wife Kathleen Boole, and Biden's daughter Naomi. We saw the anguish of addiction and the splintered family. Rick, what's your takeaway from this particular trial?
It was a very sad case, but I looked at this in perspective with the Trump case. And while the two cases have, you know, different specific charges, what they have in common is big name. They have charges that could or could not have been filed. There was a lot of discretion on the part of prosecutors. You have obviously political considerations. And what I was happy to see is that they were handled in consistent fashion. And in both of them, juries found the defendants guilty and rather quickly. So for me, I look at this as the justice system worked, and then one side can't go and say this is all rigged.
And for those of us who are in favor of common sense gun laws, we kind of have to walk the walk here. I mean, this is a law that he broke, which basically said that people who are addicted to drugs shouldn't be able to purchase a gun, and he lied about whether he was using crack cocaine and purchased a gun, and he shouldn't have been able to. And you know, if we want to support gun control and common sense gun laws, we need to support their implementation, and he was guilty.
Well, it seems a pretty clear case from what I'd been reading Anirban.
Well, I mean, you know, there's two parts to this. One is that, yes, there were crimes that were committed, and the judicial process should take its course. But I see this stark difference in the way the Republicans react to this and the Democrats' leadership reacted to this, right? The Republicans were screaming, oh, this is lawfare, the entire thing is rigged.
Talking about
Trump. But when this comes, you know, Democrats said that this is a judicial process, the judicial process should take its precedence, and we will see what happens with the appeal. Now, I was reading an article by a career prosecutor who clearly said that, you know, this is a strange case. In most cases, it could have been resolved by an appeal, and there was an appeal on the table last year, but then it got scuttled by one of the judges who was appointed by Trump. And the tax law that is coming up, the tax case that's coming up, that similar cases like that has been resolved by person just giving back the money. So did it have to go to the trial? Not really. If any prosecutor was asked that, would you want to prosecute a recovering addict based on his memoir, many prosecutors would have declined. So of course there is a judicial part of it. This is law. The law was broken, but taking it to the trial, I think, is a little bit more political. It could have been resolved by appeal, as in done in many cases.
Luke?
So we began the conversation saying that this should be considered in tandem with Donald Trump. I disagree. Donald Trump is a former president and a presidential candidate. Hunter Biden is a president's son. And I really don't care about this story. I'm in agreement that the law should be enforced. I have no issue with it happening here. But being front page news, I don't understand what the public benefit in reporting on that is. I think that we have to think long and hard about going after the kids of elected officials, even if they're adult kids. Because who wants to run for office? Why would I run for Congress knowing that my family's going to get scrutinized to the same degree that I am? That's not the type of the environment I think we want for our democracy. And I'm just kind of frustrated and dismayed that so much.
Hunter Biden was already tied to the president when he was vice president because of these suggestions that there was undue influence because of the connection. So I see what you're saying, Luke, but this is not a son that came out of nowhere. There were already the links between Biden and his son.
Is your issue here, Luke, that the prosecutors have scrutinized him or the media?
No, prosecutors need to do their job. I think the Republicans have tried to make this election about Hunter Biden, and the more we talk about that, the more we're helping that electoral strategy. And I just don't see why there's not a public benefit in covering this to the degree that we have as people providing information and analysis.
If the prosecutors are bringing a case against the son of a president, an adult son, a 50-year-old son of the president, you're suggesting that that's not newsworthy?
It should be reported on, but it should not be on the front page of the major newspapers of this country.
And I guess I can take it from that comment, and we should not be discussing it on Ivory Tower.
I didn't vote for it.
That's right. And for the audience, we do vote on what topics we're going to discuss. Just to
and I'm not trying to be sour grapes. It's just my view.
So that's okay. All right, so on that note, we're going to move to our A's and our F's. And Luke, we will start with yours.
Criticism's going.
You're going to give an F to the news media.
No. My F goes to the Shenandoah County School Board in Virginia. They recently voted to reinstate their school building names after Confederate shoulders. It prompted a prominent lawsuit this week by the NAACP, which I hope is successful.
And Anirban, your F.
Well, my F goes to the rampant and pervasive culture of child sex abuse and cover-up among American police departments and their district attorneys. The Washington Post investigation has found that over the past 2 decades, hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers in the United States have sexually abused children, while officials at every level of the criminal justice system had failed to protect kids, punish abusers, and prevent additional crimes. 1,800 of these criminals, 99% of them men, all police, have tarnished their profession and then continue to make our communities and children unsafe.
Aaron, F.
A frequent recipient of Fs, less than 1 month after signing a Don't Say Climate bill in May, Governor DeSantis of Florida now has had to declare an emergency after record climate change turbocharged rainfalls, 20 inches in some places, hit South Florida this week. The oceans are the hottest ever recorded, which pumps water into the air, and it falls all over Florida. My heart goes out to those dealing with this latest manifestation of the climate emergency. My F goes to Governor DeSantis.
And Rick, your F.
My F goes to Donald Trump for claims he made this week, saying that if he's elected president, he will lower prices. Despite not giving any evidence, most economists looking at the policies that he said he would pursue, such as deporting millions of immigrants, in terms of decreasing corporate and individual taxes, increasing tariffs, will do quite the opposite. These will all put upward pressure on prices and potentially reinvigorate inflation.
Okay, and now to our A's. Luke.
My A goes to iconic basketball player and Hall of Famer Jerry West, who died this week. Mr. Clutch, as he is known, has been the inspiration for the NBA logo.
And Anirban, your A.
My A goes to the article in the New York Review of Books by Arya Nair titled, "Is Israel Committing a Genocide?" As a veteran human rights lawyer who was initially against calling this a genocide, writes at length with detailed evidence as to why Israel is indeed committing a genocide with bombs supplied by the US. One glaring evidence is Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's words that have now become infamous. "I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. No one will be allowed electricity, no food, no fuel, everything would be closed. We are fighting human animals." This is genocide.
Aaron.
My A goes to the New York State Assembly for passing the Climate Superfund law this week that now awaits Governor Hochul's signature. This law basically charges fossil fuel companies for the damages caused by climate change. Governor Hochul lost a lot of credibility with the congestion pricing decision. She needs to sign this Superfund law now.
And Rick?
Continuing my economic theme, my A goes to the newest inflation numbers, which show that we have made further progress on reining in price increases. I also give the Federal Reserve an A for ignoring political pressure and announcing that they're going to be cautious about both the number and timing of cuts in interest rates. They're still trying to find that soft landing that will allow us to avoid a recession and get close to our 2% inflation target.
Okay, thank you. Picking up on your F, Aaron, to Governor DeSantis, and the don't say climate, I think is the way you put it. It is particularly surprising that we have that in Florida. I mean, we understand where he's coming from politically, but in Florida, of all places, where we see not only those storms, but rising sea levels.
Rising sea level, I mean, the sea level rise in Miami Beach is really impactful, and they're trying to deal with it at the city level, but now they can't think about climate at the state level, which is just silly. Okay,
thank you. And thank you for joining us this evening. For comments, you can write to the address on your screen. If you'd like to watch the show again, you can do so online at WCNY.org. I'm David Chanatry, and for all of us at Ivory Tower, have a good night.
This program is brought to you by the members of WCNY. Thank you.
Geddes Federal Savings and Loan offers home loans, IRAs, money market, checking, and savings accounts.
Geddes Federal, how can I help you this morning?
Personal service. Get it at Geddes. Offices in Westvale Plaza and in Manlius.
Bond, serving public and private companies, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs, providing a crucial link with guidance on business matters, regulatory compliance, intellectual property, and employment law. Bond, essential to your business.
Ivory Tower is sponsored by James Jordan Associates Architects, providing professional architectural services to educational, commercial, and institutional clients throughout New York State. James Jordan Associates Architects, with offices in Richfield Springs, New York.